What are you watching these days? It might have something to teach you about your spiritual journey. So let's explore that with Reverend Dr. Rachel Kessler here on Compass. Hey, welcome to Compass, Finding Spirituality in the Everyday. We're going to talk with the nerdy priest, Rachel Kessler. She leads us on an exploration of how pop culture and faith intersect in our lives. Rachel has gained notoriety on TikTok and Instagram, courtesy of a mischievous student, and continuing through her honest reflections on deconstructing faith traditions. Dr. Rachel shares in this episode how she brings authentic spiritual conversations out of the church walls and into our digital spaces. If episodes like this are valuable to you, then please hit the subscribe button on your podcast listening platform. If you've already done that, then take the next step and rate and review the Compass podcast. It really helps us and helps other people know what kind of conversations we have and how this podcast helps connect our lives to the spiritual. So thanks much for that. Rachel Kessler, a.k.a. the Nerdy Priest, is the rector of Harcourt Parish Episcopal Church and a campus chaplain at Kenyon College. She's just released the book, Nerd Faith, 60-second sprints of spiritual guidance for the occasionally uncool. It's a series of short, easily digestible questions and answers, which aims to provide alternative perspective on big theological questions like how many communion wafers make one whole Jesus, and whether the Borg from Star Trek are a good metaphor for the Holy Trinity. Whether you're a lifelong believer, an ex-evangelical, or simply spiritually curious, this episode invites you to find meaning and connection through the stories that shape our world. From Star Wars to Farscape, which I just learned about, to the enduring wisdom of the Muppets. I love episodes like this. Let's get to it. Is it Dr. Rachel Kessler? I feel like we can use that. I saw the PhD there.
It's true, yes.
Yeah.
Reverend Doctor. Some of my students call me Reverend Doctor Professor Priest Mom.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to abridge that a little bit. But yeah.
There you go, yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Compass. How goes it with your soul today?
Oh, gosh. I think all right. Actually, I'm feeling fairly settled and maybe it's the summer. It's the summer.
Yeah,
Things are relaxed and we're getting settled in for a new year. So aside from the unsettled reality of the world around us in which we live, I think in my microcosm of life.
Yes. Right. The sphere that you can control and influence is feeling all right.
Yes.
Good. Well, this is one of those weird situations that I guess we just kind of have to get used to in this day and age, where I feel like I've known you for a while because you've had this presence on the internet, and especially through TikTok, that I've been following for really, I guess, a couple years now.
Awesome.
And that's the Nerdy Priest channel on TikTok. A lot of people have come to get to know you that way. What started you doing that channel? What was your inspiration?
My inspiration was my student who stole my phone and made my TikTok account.
So did they come up with the Nerdy Priest then? They hoisted that on you?
I can't remember if that was, I used to have a little tiny private Instagram that maybe was the Nerdy Priest. So they might have gotten, which was like 15 followers. So they may have gotten it from there, but they definitely created the Nerdy Priest TikTok account because they really wanted me to be on TikTok and thought that I should be on TikTok. And I was like, but I am not a cool priest. The cool priests are on TikTok. And my first video is actually, it was our Shrove Tuesday pancake supper in 2020 of people making pancakes set to the Cantina Band song from Star Wars. And then COVID happened it was right at the time when the students went to spring break and did not come back, which is how that went down here on our campus. And so like in the midst of all of that, I think looking for some kind of outlet for my own just pandemic era muddled brain to have a creative pastoral outlet, I started making some content and videos on TikTok. And I realized actually one of the people was Abraham Piper. I don't know if you followed Abraham Piper. So this is John Piper's son.
Okay.
Who was posting, and he doesn't really post much anymore, but in that like 2020, 2021 time, he was posting a lot. And that was one of the things that made me realize, oh, I can just like talk. I can just make talky videos, and I have things that I could talk about. and he was talking about, faith deconstruction type stuff, being the son of John Piper, as he was, is. And so I think that really got me just making videos as an outlet, and then realizing that there are a lot of people out there who want to engage with genuine content. And one of the things I started doing was talking about being a former evangelical and things like fear. I think one of my first posts that really gained traction was about fear of the rapture, and being like, this is a thing other people experienced and resonate with, and things kind of came from there.
Yeah. Well, now you seem to have worked into this niche of relating the spiritual to pop culture. A lot of times that's the lens. In doing those kinds of videos and in reaching really well beyond what many of us would consider the normal parish. You're interacting
absolutely.
with any number of people who may come from various spiritual backgrounds. What have you really discovered about people's spiritual curiosities through that space? What kind of questions are they asking?
Well, I think people want genuine engagement, right? They want the church to be engaging honestly and critically with questions of faith, spirituality, God. And I think what works is I don't have a gimmick per se that is like faith, and I'm not approaching that as a gimmick. That is just what I do. Like, I like pop culture. I like Jesus. I am in the church. And I used to, my church, the church that I served before I came to my current position, I did a blog that was just a weekly reflections on something. And it just ended up being what I was watching, what I was reading.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just like, I engage with a lot of media. I read a lot. I watch a lot of TV. I enjoy media, and I have a PhD in literature, right? Like I like overanalyzing things, shockingly enough. And so it just happens to be the lens that I'm going to bring to the media that I'm critiquing is going to be based in my faith and my perspective, right? That's how I view the world. And one of the things that I do is my 60-second sermons that I do every week, which is based on the actual sermon that I preach to my congregation in person on a Sunday morning, usually is taking just whatever is the central illustration of my sermon that week and condensing it into a little mini version of that for TikTok or Instagram Reels.
I get a kick out of seeing the comments where other church leaders or ministers are kind of anticipating what you're going to say, because it's like, oh, I'm going to bring this into my sermon. Because
I've occasionally had people ask me if I can post them slightly earlier in the week, but that would involve far more advanced planning on my part. I have to get a week ahead of the lectionary on that. I probably should. Usually I am posting them on Sunday mornings right before I go. It's like partially it's how I make sure, because I don't preach from a manuscript. So part of it is just me making sure I have the main articulated point of my sermon in my head before I go into my in-person congregation. But to kind of bring it around to your the initial question you were asking about what people are seeking, I think part of why that resonates is because it's authentic for me, right? It is authentically how I engage with my faith. And authentically how I am engaging with the media that I am consuming. So I think the people for whom it resonates are because I'm bringing my own genuine thoughts and reflections about media that is more common or more mainstream. And I think that's the part that is connecting. And I think that's what people are hungry for.
So are there consistent questions that you tend to see in your work, especially on TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big ones, right? We can jump into the controversial stuff. One of the things I talk
Yeah.
about a lot is belief in universal salvation, right? The
Mm,
idea of universal reconciliation with God. Um, and that one gets people a lot.
mm,
And when I talk about, there is that sense of, but why bother being a Christian? Why bother believing if you're just going to get saved in the end? And I think the very honest sense of like, but what about, right? The what about Hitler questions,
yeah.
which are
Mhm.
really understandable.
Yeah.
What is the line of justice and redemption and reconciliation? And I think the what about, like, the why be a Christian question is one that I think for me gives us a really big opportunity to talk about it, right? Okay, so what do we understand salvation to be?
Hmm.
Like, it's not, is salvation a prize, or do we actually understand salvation as being a restored and reconciled way of living into relationship with God and our neighbor?
Yeah.
And that framing changes the question a lot. And then, I
Mm,
mean, I get a lot of questions about, like, why are you still a Christian? Why bother being, how do you reconcile with the fact that Christianity has many problematic elements and many problematic expressions,
yeah.
right? And I think that's a very genuine question, and one that we have to be willing to answer honestly and not just fall into the trap of, but not all, hashtag not all Christians, or they're not the no true Scotsmen. Well, but they're not
Mm,
the real Christians. I think you have to be willing to sit with the honest tension
yeah.
of that.
Well, and that's what makes your voice so important in a space like that, where um, it does challenge people to broaden their
Mhm.
sense of what a Christian
Yes.
voice sounds like or what a
Yeah.
Christian voice says or presents.
Yes.
With that, though, you invite a lot of pushback. And in
Absolutely.
my work, I find that the most critical voices are from those within the church universal. I don't know
Yes.
if you found that to be the same in your work or not. How do you find yourself dealing with those critical voices? Is it
I
just the
mean, I think
block button?
oh, I am so liberal with the block button.
Yeah.
You have
Okay.
I make no apologies for blocking people. One of the things, the late of blessed memory Rachel Held Evans, one of the
Mm,
things I remember that she would talk about is having on her computer, like, tell the truth. And that's
mm,
one of like, I don't owe people, any of them, me personally, any of us who are doing this digital online work, right? What we owe audiences is honesty and authenticity and faithfulness. We don't
mm.
owe anyone access to us just because we have chosen to do work online. And I am pretty firm with not opening myself up to any engagement that is not respectful of me, my personhood, my time. Um, and I'm pretty clear on that. And there have been times that I've blocked people and they have followed me to another platform
Mm.
and,
Wow.
like, demanded to know why, or looked up my email and have antagonized me. And I'm like, you are not
Mm.
making the case for why I should not have blocked you.
Right. Yeah.
You're like,
This is not a
um,
healthy
yeah.
expression of
Absolutely. So I
a
think
dialogue. Yeah.
for I'm pretty liberal with blocking people, because I think, like, I mean, the work that I do online, I do on top of my actual jobs, my multiple jobs, and I'm very
Mm,
grateful. Like, I think my parish leadership understands online, like, the work of online ministry, and is
mhm.
happy for me to do it. But I'm also mindful of my time, and that
Yeah.
this is something I'm doing on top of a lot of other things. And so I just have to, in terms of stewardship, I can't necessarily give time to every critique.
Yeah. Mm,
If there is something that I feel like is an honest question, if someone is approaching with an honest question of like, how do you make sense of this? I genuinely don't understand how you cannot believe in hell, like a hell of eternal conscious torment, given that, right? I'll engage with, right? Because I do think that question and answers and being in conversation is really important and is a gift of online platforms. But there's a line between that and just trolling. Mm-hmm. And I also think that progressive Christians don't need to play defense in this regard, right? Like there is a sense of, and this is something I had to kind of get over in my own head, in my own journey, like kind of coming out of a much more conservative evangelical background, is like that conservative, you know, from certain conservative whether it's conservative evangelicals, or I got a lot of Catholics. The Catholics love getting at me, calling me back to the one true church. Like I'm not accountable to them. Like I'm not accountable to them for my reading of scripture or my understanding of the faith. So again, I will have honest engagement and question, but I'm not going to defend myself to someone who is putting me in a position to need to defend myself and isn't looking for honest mutual understanding. Right. And I know some clergy women online who have muted Timothy. Like they just have the word Timothy muted in their filters, because like so many people that will just drop I don't even know off the top of my head if it's first or second. They'll just drop scripture references. It's the people who just drop scripture references in the comments, and you're like, I'm rethinking my entire vocation because of you. Good job.
and you're passing comment. That you trolled around just looking for somebody who is you can throw it at. Yeah. Well, let's talk about something a little bit more fun. How about that? Let's get into some nerd faith in the book that you've released, which actually is called Nerd Faith.
It is, yes.
You put together these short, accessible reflections. It sounds like maybe they were based out of your 60-second sermons. And why do you think that and they're really concentrated around the pop culture stories that we share? So things from TV or books or other fandom areas. And why do you think that these stories, these narratives, provide such a good platform for leading into conversations about faith?
Because they are both, like, they're very universal. For the most part, whether you're talking about like The Lord of the Rings or something like Ted Lasso, like these are things people know and are familiar with, but may have not ever thought about in a way as pointing to something bigger. And so I think it gives people an opportunity to go, oh, like that actually, I never thought that there could be a connection between like the church stuff over there in the building and these stories that are out here. And so I think it invites people to make connections between something like faith that can feel like a very rarefied thing that exists in this very set box with what feels like much more accessible stories or parts of culture.
Well, for you, it sounds like it's a way of tying together your own spiritual experience with some of your lived experience.
And for sure.
And it's funny that you put that as a, kind of coming out in a nerdy way. I have a friend, Nathan, who says that everybody's a nerd for something, right? We all have our nerdy areas.
Yes.
Like right now, a lot of people are nerdy for soccer, and some people are nerdy for music. Other people are nerdy for anime. And with that, maybe comes the feeling that, well, occasionally we are uncool because we're set in this space where our interest sets us apart from other people. And a lot of people bring that sense of apartness into the feeling of church connection and spiritual community, where they feel like their interests or the things that they have questions about maybe set them apart from the faith community in general. And I'm wondering if you have a perspective of what nerd culture might be able to teach us about community and belonging for those who maybe feel like, I don't know. I have these questions, and I just don't think like a church is a place for me to connect and process those.
Mm. I mean, I think fandom culture creates belonging, right? And it gives space for belonging and shared language. I actually want to turn the conversation a little bit because you
Cool.
you asked me
Okay.
this question before, and when I was thinking about it, I uh, I actually think there's cautionary tales from nerd culture and fandom that the church can be aware of. Because one of the
Okay.
things that fandom culture can be not great about is gatekeeping,
Mm,
right? Like, are
yeah.
you a real fan? Oh, you like Star Wars? List 3 characters that don't occur in the original trilogy. Or,
Mhm.
there is this sense of, especially when we have not felt like we belong, finding belonging in a fandom, suddenly that sense of belonging can be threatened if it starts feeling like others are coming in, and we want to protect the purity of this thing we love that has given us a sense of belonging. And so we put a bunch of there can be a tendency to put barriers around it. And the Star Wars fandom is
Mm.
particularly, like, maybe the worst
Uh,
of all of them about this. Don't get me started. Um, and so I think what the church can be, I think the cautionary tale from fandom there is for the church to be wary of gatekeeping and be wary
mm,
of the sense that you have to prove yourself or pass some litmus test in order to have that belonging, and that it's really someone is drawn to the church or a faith community of any kind out of a sense of curiosity or openness to embrace that rather than immediately want to put um, more walls and barriers of entry. So that is my little like flip of that question, perhaps.
So do you see your book or your TikTok presence as being a way of breaking down that barrier a little bit?
I hope so, right? I think what we all do, I think the idea for many of us who are clergy who have online presences, right? I'm sure you feel this way as well. It is a way to get outside of the walls of the church
Hmm.
into the world. And I mean, it's one of the things I love about being a chaplain is that I do get to have conversations with people who are not part of the church per se quite often. And I think that that idea of wanting to bring the the values and the belief and the faith and the hope that I have that's formed in my like religious identity as a Christian and as a pastor to the world, not for the sake of proselytizing and conversion per se, but for the sake of meeting people where they are and being able to have conversations with people outside of what can feel like a really heavy barrier to the like church capital C.
I'm wondering how much what we're talking about reflects your own experience. You mentioned that you
Mm,
grew up in kind of
yeah,
a conservative
absolutely.
expression of church,
Yeah.
and now serve in a role that is,
Hmm.
in a tradition that's probably considered more progressive.
Yes.
Was there a voice or a mentor or somebody who played the role of Rachel Kessler for the
Oh
real Rachel
gosh.
Kessler in your own faith development?
I mean, so many people, it's hard to point to
Yeah.
one. I mean,
Um,
one of the weird things about my life is that I currently pastor the church that I attended in undergrad,
hmm,
which is strange and like
yeah.
you're not supposed to go back and serve as a pastor at a church that you once attended. And mine
Right.
is
Yeah.
yeah, right?
Especially as a
Like
young person, because there's probably that
yeah.
trapping of people who remember.
Yes, and I think it's,
The,
being an alum and coming back, right,
mm,
that there's a weirdness to the position that I serve in. And I think because so many people have come back who were alums have come back to work in various capacities at my
okay.
college. I One of the things I love about the community here is they're particularly good at accepting you back as an adult and not
Mm,
seeing you as the person you were at 19.
Yeah.
per
Okay.
se. And I think that's a real gift. Um, but I think there were a number of people that I can point to along the way who started just breaking down kind of the really strict boxes that I had, right? Like my academic mentor, who was also a member of the church, who is now tragically passed on. But like he was he was relatively foul-mouthed and
Okay.
told vaguely inappropriate jokes
Mm,
in class, but was also deeply devout and very joyous and a bit ridiculous. And I think there was something, I saw some different way of being in relationship to Christianity through him. I mean, I have the pastoral mentor who worked with me when I started attending an Anglican church in Toronto, where I was ordained, was just very good at like poking the little questions
mm,
at me. Like, okay, if we're only saved through faith, and if we're saved by our faith, how does our faith not then become the work by which we are saved? And I feel like I feel like I sat with that one for ages
mm,
and just mulled on it for a long time. And it started eroding certain, certain foundations of the Protestant Reformation. But, I mean, there are so many people, but like, one of I've already mentioned Rachel Held Evans.
mm,
I think I was coming to that place of questioning my background and, doing the deconstructing before it was cool. And I think Rachel Held Evans was really one of the only voices doing this type of work
mm,
online.
mm,
Right.
mhm.
And I think we can make, you know, I don't want to make too much of her, but she was the one person who was really prominently and publicly asking a lot of those questions as
Yeah.
a deconstructing evangelical, and not in a way that was outside of the faith, but someone who was still wrestling with her identity inside the faith. And
Yeah.
I mean, so I definitely don't mean to suggest I have any kind of the platform that Rachel Held Evans had during her life, but I certainly think about the importance of that work and feeling less alone because of what she was doing was really
Mm.
important.
Well, I think what Rachel Held Evans offered, and what I believe I see you offering as well, is a sense of echo, or healthy echo, or identification or
Yeah.
empathy, I guess really
Mm-hmm.
is what it is for people who are in the spiritually curious space, but are wondering what that looks like, to be a person
Yes.
of faith with those questions. I suppose you do this all the time. And maybe this is a rudimentary question, but it's challenging for me. Like, if you're talking to somebody who's in that space right now, what would you want them to know?
I mean, that there isn't one specific way
Mm,
to be a Christian, right? And I think that there is space for different perspectives and beliefs and questioning. And I sometimes, because I am coming from a like quote unquote evangelical perspective, which I have complicated feelings about that term, but
mm,
for what it is, um, coming from that perspective, I sometimes get asked, right? Another question that I will often get asked is, why do you hate evangelicals so much? Why do you have it
mm,
out for evangelicals? And I'm like, it's my background. I'm not gonna make an anti-Catholic TikTok screed because I didn't come from like, I have thoughts about the Catholic Church, both positive and negative, but that's not my story to tell, and that's not my story to negotiate. What I have is my experience coming out of the evangelical world with a lot of family who's still in the evangelical world.
mm,
Um, and I can speak to that. And I can particularly speak to being brought up in a framework that was, if you're not a white American evangelical Christian, you're not a Christian, right?
yeah.
That is the default Christian, and anyone else is other and has to explain how they are truly a Christian to the standard of white American evangelicals. And so to the extent that I have an agenda, it is to show that there is another way to be a Christian. Not to say these people can't be Christians or they are heretics, although I have some opinions about certain manifestations of Christianity at the moment. But to say they don't get to define what it is to be a Christian. They don't get the last word. They don't, I am not accountable. I'm accountable to God. I am not accountable to them. And so that is what I hope to show in what I do online.
Okay. So for that person who is curious, we're going to get back to the nerdy faith sense of things here.
Yes.
And you want to point towards a story, a book series, a Star Wars trilogy, each one separately on their own, not the whole arc altogether.
Yes.
Is there one that you feel like is just, this is such a great allegory for a person wrestling with faith?
Okay, this is where I get to talk about Farscape, right? This is where I can talk about Farscape.
I teed it up. Yep, take us home.
Are you familiar with Farscape at all? Have you
no.
heard of it?
I mean, outside of the fact that I've seen this nerdy priest person talk about Farscape a few times. Yeah.
Okay, so Sci-Fi Channel original series from the 90s. American astronaut goes through, it's a portal fantasy, space opera portal fantasy, goes through a wormhole into the far side of the universe. And it is reckoning with, it is absolutely about, from my standpoint, I resonate deeply from the standpoint of faith deconstruction, because it is a whole, the whole first season, he has to come to terms with, he is the alpha American male and is, forced to radically come to terms with his inability to be the alpha male in this universe. And my favorite character is the female lead, who is a former space Nazi, your generic space fascist, sci-fi character who gets stuck with these people, gets stuck with them, and is deemed then impure by her fascistic space government. So is forced to be with this motley crew of alien criminals. And it's she is coming to terms with having her worldview and what she understood broken down consistently through the series. And one of the bits that I talk about in the book is when she's reconfronted with her commander, the commander who kicked her out, who offers her a chance to go back. And she's like, I don't want to go back to your world. Which I find so powerful. And there is another scene where she's confronted with her former best friend who calls her a traitor, and she's like, I'm not all of the beliefs and all of the values that the peacekeepers gave me, I still hold. I've just learned a different way to live into them. And I mean, that is the story of the deconstructed evangelical, right?
Well, look, you could even argue that is the story of Jesus, right?
Right.
Inherited this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, inherited this religious system that says, oh, but there's another way of looking at this. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's many things. And again, the whole idea of the idea of wonder and the idea of expansiveness and the idea of exploring things that are bigger than the limited reality that you were born into. Also Muppets. The Muppets. Right?
The Muppets.
Just throw that in. Well, no, so Farscape is made by the Jim Henson Company. So all of the aliens
there's Muppets in
it's Muppets in space. All of the aliens are Jim Henson workshop Muppets. Brian Henson was the executive producer of it. But also Muppets. Is there a better illustration of the body of Christ than the Muppets.
I don't know. We're going to need another half hour, Rachel. But so maybe instead of that, we can do a part 2, or people can find your channel and you're going to present this stuff there. I'm going to be looking for the video about like Muppets as an allegory for the community of faith. Where would you recommend people do connect with you? Is the TikTok channel the best way? How's it?
TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. I like Threads.
Yeah.
So the nerdy priest on all of those places.
Excellent. Yep. Yeah. Congratulations on winning that handle.
Thank you so much.
That's a good one. And and yeah, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your experience.
Thanks for having me.
Once again, thanks for joining us for this nerdy, geeky, fun dive into faith on Compass, finding spirituality in the everyday. If you'd like to dig deeper, then head on over to our website, umc.org/compass, where you'll find episode notes and more episodes to explore. We have episodes on Star Wars, Star Trek, more nerd faith, gaming, and a whole lot more. A big thank you to the team at United Methodist Communications for making this podcast possible. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Compass on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to rate and review. It helps others find us and supports the work that we're doing. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks' time here on Compass.